Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I'm an alcoholic. My name is Bud. And my friends do call me Ungrateful. As a matter of fact, they don't even call me Bud. I got that name early in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I do know my story, and you're going to get to know more of it than you ever wanted to. So just relax. I understand this thing's over, what, in 15 minutes? Or an hour and 15 minutes? Is this thing right? All right. Well, we'll do it, whatever we have to do. Is it 8:15 or 7:15? Okay. Anyway, I know what I have to do for the next hour or 45 minutes. What I don't know is what you have to do. So if you finish ahead of me, go ahead. It'll be fine. They've already collected your money, and I knew that I don't think I'd ever spoken here before, but when they passed the basket and got the money first, I thought, well, maybe I did talk here once. I've been alcoholic now for 25 years, 7 months, and 16 days. And the 20 years that preceded that, I was a social drinker. And I always drank like a gentleman, and nothing bad ever happened to me. And that's how I ended up in the Friday Night Men's Stag in Anaheim. Could I see the... what I'd like to do is have everybody who's sober longer than 25 years, 7 months and 16 days, stand up. Ron, stand up. I know you are. See, you can't even stand when you're sober that long. Well, as a matter of fact, Ron's one of the guys that saw me when I got here, and he was a member of that Friday Night Men's Stag, and I thought he was a newcomer too, but he had been sober a couple of years, but he still looked new to me. Anyway, I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was brought here. Could I see the hands of the newcomers? I understand there was, oh, we got a couple. Good, 3. Picked up one. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't understand newcomers that have the guts to stand up or raise their hand. In my 25 years, 7 months, and 16 days, it's been my experience that for every newcomer that can do that, there are usually an equal number who do not. So I always like to welcome the folks that didn't raise your hand and to tell you that you're especially welcome in Alcoholics Anonymous because you're doing this thing right. That's exactly the way I did it. And you got the right attitude. You probably haven't met anybody you liked or liked anybody you met, and you're pissed off at the speaker and you haven't even heard his story yet. So you're home. You got the right attitude. You're going to be fine. And so anyway, somebody mentioned that he wasn't, one of the birthday folks mentioned that he wasn't an alcoholic when he got here either. He's probably a social drinker like I was. And for the new folks that are here, the 3 gutsy one and my 3, after you're here for a while, I like to talk to new people because they don't know anything anyway, you know, and what they don't know is that we don't know anything. And that after you're here for a while, you're going to find out that you're diseased, and that should thrill you. And You're going to find out you got a disease of a twofold nature, allergy of the body coupled with an obsession of the mind. In my case, it turned out to be twofold, allergy of the body coupled with an absence of the mind. But that kind of happens to social drinkers of my type. But anyway, you're going to find out that you're stuck with this disease, and it's contagious disease, caught in rooms like this from people like these, especially people like Ron. And if you don't want alcoholism, you have to stay out of these rooms, because alkies love to infect other people with their disease. Now, the reason for that is this. Once they infect you, they get rid of a little bit of it. They never, ever get rid of all of it, but they get rid of enough of it that they feel better. And that's why they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, keep coming back, you know, because once you get their damn disease, then you're stuck with it forever. And then you have to keep coming back, and then hope some dummy will come up to you and say, hey, would you be my sponsor? And then always say, hell yes, and then infect him or her. And then you'll get to feeling better. And I didn't get to feeling better in Alcoholics Anonymous till I started trying to infect other people. And I do it at the drop of a hat. Man, I've tried to infect people that don't even drink, you know. Now, it doesn't work, but I feel better. Here, take some of this, you know, and try to infect one of those Al-Anons. You know, that'll get you going. Are there any of those here tonight? Anyway, I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was brought here by my attorney, who's alcoholic. And he didn't tell me what he was about to do to me, infect me with his damn disease. And so he took me to Laguna Beach Wednesday night, women's club down there, Chuck C's old home group. And they opened the damn thing. Now, nobody explains anything in Alcoholics Anonymous. They weren't doing it back then, 25 years ago, and I notice they still don't. But anyway, they opened the damn thing by praying over us, and I wasn't too impressed with that. But I figured Wednesday night, prayer meeting, here we go again, because I'd been that route. And so anyway, they prayed over us, and then they read 10 of this and 12 of these and 3 of those, and obviously had this Catholic-type ritual they had to get through. And then after they got that all taken care of, then they hauled out this birthday cake, like they did tonight, and they sang Happy Birthday to this old toothless wonder. And had 13 candles on it. They said he was 13. He was 85 if he was a day. Said he was 13. Anyway, he finally got the candles all blown out, and then they got him down off the stage, and he gummed out a few words, and they got him down off the stage, and then they called on this guy to talk. Now, the guy they called on to talk was a Catholic priest in uniform. I don't know white collar and the whole bit. And so I figured right away that the Catholics were out to get me again, because they had me a couple of times. And so now nobody explains anything, but alkies don't need anything explained to them. We figure these things out, you know. And so I figured, what happens here in Alcoholics Anonymous is that they have these various religious leaders come in and talk to you folks and tell you how to kind of shut it down at 6 or 8, you know, and then square your life around a little bit. But it turns out this old guy's a drunk. His name was Father Barney. He died here a few years ago. But Father Barney was a gruff old rascal, and what he did, he stood up there in front of that group of 200 people and he preached. And he sounded like every old addle-brained minister I'd ever heard in my life, all rolled up into one. And I couldn't stand the old codger. And so I did. The only thing I heard Father Barney say that night, the only thing I remember was, I never had any damn pink clouds. And that's the only thing I remember him saying. And I found out they taped that meeting after I was sober a little while, and I thought, you better buy that tape and listen to it and see what the hell went on. So I bought that tape and listened to it. And sure enough, about 3 times in that talk, he said, I never had any damn pink clouds. And that's just the way Father Barney talked. And gruff old rascal. And I think he must have marked me, because I've not had any damn pink clouds either. But I've also not had a drink or a mind-changing chemical since my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't plan it that way. And anyway, they finally got him shut up. And then, now the reason I hadn't heard anything after I listened to that tape is because the text of his sermon that night was, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand Him. And he went on from there. Now, I don't know about you, but at my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was not ready for that. And I didn't hear it either. So anyway, they got him shut up, and then they collected the money. well, I recognized that one right away, and I wondered how much he got for that lousy talk. And but I got even with them. I didn't put in. And so anyway, they got the money all collected, and then they jumped up to pray over us again. Now, when they had started the meeting, they asked for newcomers and old-timers and out-of-towners and Al-Anoners and Alzheimer's. They asked for people I'd never even heard of. And there was a gal sitting on my left, and she hadn't stood up for anything either. So I figured, she's like I am, social drinker, checking this thing out. And so, anyway, only this time they grabbed your hand on either side, and they prayed over us. And at the end of the prayer, she gave it a little squeeze, And so I figured, well, here we go again. But the guy on the right gave it a little squeeze, too. And I figured Laguna Beach, what the hell. And so anyway, I got out of there as quick as I could, and so I came back the next week, and I couldn't believe it, because there was another Catholic priest in uniform, had on the white collar and the whole bit. So I figured, man, once you've been Catholic, they really come after you. And only this is a young guy from Los Angeles, name's Terry. Now, Terry still talks in Alcoholics Anonymous, but he doesn't wear that damn uniform anymore. He talks in regular street alky clothes like any good alky should. And old Terry stood up there in front of that group of 200 people, and he told things I don't think I would have told in a stag. And I thought he was the worst thing I'd ever heard in my life, and I just loved the guy. And so anyway, I came back the third week, and I'm getting the hang of this thing, so I thought, well, this week there'll be Sister Mary Catherine up there, and she'll be in her habit, and tell about drinking a cooking sherry or sleeping with the priest, some damn thing. And sure enough, there was a gal talked that third week, but she was no nun. Little lady had legally marched down the aisle 8 times, and I understood part of that, and they told me to keep coming back and more would be revealed to me. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous has been for me, a series of revelations all about Bud, the real Bud, the guy that I did not know. And so I went to 17 meetings before I'd had enough of their revelations that I could stand up and say, my name's Bud, and I'm a you-know-what. And so then they made you stand up for 30 days back then, and so I'm bobbing up and down for the next 13 days. And I was still going to speaker meetings in those early days. I didn't learn right away that Alcoholics Anonymous is one drunk talking to another, and podium participation and roundtable discussion and book study and step study and men's stag and lady stags. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. These speaker meetings are just great places to hide out, and if you go to one of these, you sort of deserve what you get. So anyway, I was still going to speaker meetings on my 30th day, and it was at the Women's Club on the Peninsula down there on Thursday night. So anyway, they came to the newcomer part, and I stood up and I said, I'm happy to announce this is my 30th day and I can stop this damn bobbing up and down. And I sat down. Now, the gal was leading that meeting that night, and the gal that was the big 1-hour talker, they got together at the coffee break, and their format was like yours. After the coffee break, they had somebody read the traditions. And so when they came back from the coffee break, the gal said, could we have that 30-day miracle up here? He needs help. Now, they didn't give chips back in those days. I'm still a little upset about that. But I thought after 30 days in AA, you finally get recognized. And so anyway, I went up there, and the gal said, you got to read the 12 traditions. I said, I've never done that. And she looked me right in the eye, and she said, you never say no in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't know what they do, take their damn 30 days away or what. And so anyway, I read their traditions, and after I got through, the gal said, well, that wasn't too bad. She said, you got to keep doing it to get them right. She said, do you have a sponsor? Well, I figured that damn lawyer that infected me was my sponsor. I said, yeah, I didn't fall off the turnip truck. And she said, that's good. And she said, you now have 2 self-appointed spiritual advisors. And this gal talked a lot all over Southern California. And every time she went somewhere to talk, she'd call me, and I'd have to go along and read their traditions. Now, I thought that's the way this thing works in AA. If you get asked to go talk, you bring your tradition reader with you. And And I still do that to this day. And when I called him up tonight, he's sick in bed with the flu. Can you believe that flimsy excuse? And he's sober. As a matter of fact, 2 days ago was his 23rd birthday. But, you know, hell, reading the traditions is doing it for him, so he's fine. So anyway, I kept reading the traditions, and after about 3 months, we ended up over in the basement of one of those churches in Covina one night, and I could not believe it, because the gal that was the leader that night was sober 3 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, and she did not know anything about this program. She had somebody from her own group read the traditions. Can you believe that? And so I was telling Sue about this on the way home, and she said, well, that's your basic resentment, dummy. And Sue is now sober 33 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, and she still calls me dummy. Anyway, after about 6 months, we ended up in Costa Mesa one night. I'm a 6-month tradition reader, and she said, Bud, they got a 10-minute talker tonight, and you're it. And I said, well, what do you think I ought to talk about? And she said, why don't you tell them what you used to be like, what happened, and what you're like now? And I said, well, I used to drink too much, came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and now I read the 12 traditions. And that's not going to take 10 minutes. And she said, that's all right, you haven't missed anything. Come on in, sit down. You'll be all right. And it's not going to take 10 minutes. Anyway, I did talk, and after I got through, a guy came up to me after the meeting, and he said, Bud, I really did like what you had to say, but he said, when you told what you used to be like, what happened, and what you're like now, he said, I could not tell where you made those transitions, you know. So my story sort of disclosed in a general way what I used to be like, what happened, and how little I've changed. But if you don't take a drink one day at a time, and it stacks up into 25 years, 7 months, and 16 days. Big changes take place, and that's what this thing's all about, and it's just unbelievable. I enjoyed the birthday folks and the miracle ex-cardiac cripple, and I'll have to tell that part of my story tonight, because I too am a marathoner, and sometimes I get into that and sometimes I don't. Anyway, after it's popular in Alcoholics Anonymous to talk about your bottom, and I was born on the 18th of December 1929 in the Panhandle of Texas, and that's where I hit bottom. 1929 was not your better year, and the Panhandle of Texas is apparently not God's gift to anybody or anything. And the 18th of December comes 1 week before the birthday, and it's coming up. And I'm from a large family. I'm one of 11 children. There are 8 of us still alive. I'm the only alcoholic in the bunch. There are a few drunks scattered around the group, but I'm the only alkie. And if you come from a large family like that, your birthday doesn't often get remembered anyway. But when it comes 1 week before the birthday, it gets forgotten a lot. And I was not aware of how much that was a problem for me until I ended up at the Friday night men's stag in Anaheim, where I met Rotten Ron. And he comes by that name legitimately. Anyway, I was talking to a guy one night, and I said, he said, Bud, do you know what really burns my ass? And I said, no, what? And he said, a grass fire about that high. And I like that story. That's kind of the story of my life, and I'd think, well, I'll outgrow this one, and somebody would come by and set a little bit higher grass fire. As a matter of fact, before I got to the Friday night men's stag in Anaheim, they used to call me Old Grass Fire Bud. And then the guys in Anaheim changed it to Ungrateful. And anyway, that birthday was a grass fire for me, and I wasn't aware of it until I got there, and they got to, I'd been there about 6 months. And as a matter of fact, I call Ron my spiritual advisor. He was my first spiritual advisor in Alcoholics Anonymous, because they got to talking this. I'd been there 6 months, and I hadn't said anything. You weren't allowed to, really, and but I hadn't anyway. But they got to talking this one night about these rotten people that we get associated with, well-meaning mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and husbands and wives, and the rotten enablers that kill us. And God, I recognized that. Just bad deal. Poor little old Bud. So I started telling them about this. Poor little old Bud, born on the wrong side of the track. tracks. Man, nobody ever loved me or cared for me, even remembered my birthday, you know, and loving, tender bunch of guys in Anaheim. And so they sat me down after the meeting, and they said, Bud, I want to tell you something. Your natal birthday is meaningless. But you're now in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm going to tell you what we've done for you. We've given you a brand new birthday. And I'll tell you what else we've done for you. If you're getting grass fires over this one, we're going to let you go out tomorrow and have another one. And if you don't like that one, you go out and find another one. When you find one you like, come on back in here. We're going to sing happy birthday to you every year. Now, I understand that kind of love talk, and I needed that kind of love talk. And I've not had any grass fires over my birthday. My birthday is April 21st, 1971. I like being a spring baby. And first guy that ever called me that at that Friday night stag, you remember that big guy is about 6'4", and called me a baby? You know, I wanted to punch him. You think better when you're sober. I was sober 4 months, and so I didn't punch him, and I like being a spring baby, and I've not had any grass fires. Anyway, my parents, little thumbnail sketch of that, my parents left the sovereign state of Texas when I was 3. So I really don't know much about that place, but they moved to the panhandle of New Mexico, and the grass fires got hotter and higher and heavier, and I can tell you a lot about that place. This neighborhood that we moved into, in our neighborhood, everybody had outdoor facilities. Now, outdoor facilities have to set out there about 100 yards to sort of get away from the smell. And in our neighborhood, if your outdoor facility was a two-holer, you were considered class. Now, we had a two-holer, not because we were so classy, but of necessity. You know, if you got a large family, kids like that, you better have a two-holer. And so we had a two-holer. Now, the reason this has become such a part of my story is that one of my younger brothers was out here about 15 years ago and embarrassed me in front of my friends in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, he said, Bud, do you remember the night you burned down the two-holer? Well, I mean, you know, there's not really a lot of class, even in Alcoholics Anonymous, talking about burning down two-holers. So anyway, it's the way this thing happened. Back there in the wintertime, it's cold, and if you have to make that run in the middle of the night, before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I could not tell you about me, about the real me, because macho men aren't afraid of hell, death, nor the grave. And the truth of the matter is, I was terrified of the dark. I didn't know who they were, but I knew that they were out there. And so what I'd do, I'd con one of these younger brothers into making the run with me, you know, if I had to go in the middle of the night, because I figured that whoever they were, they'd catch him and eat him first, see, and I'd get away. So I had to con my little brother into making a run, and you can only steal a couple of her wooden kitchen matches, because if too many of those come up missing, she gets suspicious. So I stole my 2 wooden kitchen matches, got my little brother conned into making a run, and we get out there in the dark safely. And we get out there, and so I post him at guard, and I sit down and getting prepared to take care of business. Now, the Sears catalog works for a lot of things. It's good for a picture book in the daytime, but not too good at night. But it's also good for the cleanup job. And if you tear off one page at a time, and you crumple one page at a time, and use one of your kitchen matches, and you just kind of burn one page at a time there in the corner, it kind of takes the chill off of that place. So I'm sitting there taking care of business, got him posted at guard, and I got my heater going. And the heater got away from me. And up she went. And I was the first one out. I beat him out. He apparently almost went up with it. Left a hell of an impression on him. Man's never had a drink in his life. Became a minister of the Holy Gospel. Weird dude. And so anyway, that was the neighborhood. And if you got a large family of kids like that, I found out after I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, you can order out of that damn thing. My family didn't know that. that you can order out of that thing. It had a purpose that I didn't even know about. So anyway, you got a large family of kids like that. You got a bedwetter. You got a kid with a problem. You got another one that stutters. You got a kid with a problem. You got another one that bites his nails. Got a kid with a problem. And this family had a kid with a problem. I was all three of them. And the other weird thing about me was that I did well in school. Now, that's kind of been revealed to me since I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I really don't think I was all that good a student. But, God, I was fascinated by those indoor facilities, because when you got to school, they flipped those lights on and those suckers came on. And I was super impressed by that. Beat the heck out of that kerosene lamp at home. And those other facilities, when you get through, you just turn around and flush it and watch it go. I used to wonder, where does it go? You know. Because at home it's there tomorrow and the next day and next week and next month and ad infinitum. I knew about ad infinitum before I got here. And so anyway, in my family, if you make it to the 8th grade, that's top shelf. Get out of here and get a job. Put something in this pot, boy. Girl, same way. 8th grade, get a job. Put something in this pot, girl. And anyway, when I graduated from high school, my family had never had a kid do that. But they had never had a kid fascinated with indoor facilities like I was either. And so when I graduated, they didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what they were doing. I had a lot of misconceptions. Back there in my hometown, doctors' sons became doctors, dentists' sons became dentists, and all the damn lawyers' sons became judges. And this thing they were trying to pawn off on me was a drunken carpenter, you know. And he didn't walk or talk like Jesus. He talked a lot about Jesus Christ, you know. And anyway, to make a long story real short, after that first 12 years of formal education, I was to add an additional 14, giving me a total of 26. And if you're that fascinated with indoor facilities, you'll end up with a couple of degrees, and I did. And my sponsor always reminds me that a rectal thermometer has a lot of degrees, and so that's about what that's worth, and we don't have to go into any of that. Anyway, as I said, I had a lot of misconceptions. I finally did start to drink. They started the Korean peace action when I turned 21, and the Army sent me a notice and said, we're going to draft you. And I said, well, you can't draft me. I've been to school. And they said, oh, yeah, we can do that, man. So anyway, I grabbed one of these degrees and ran over and showed it to the Air Force, and they were impressed. And so they gave me a direct commission, made me an officer and gentleman by an act of Congress, and shipped me to Northern California. And I got to Northern California. I was one of those guys, you know, the book talks about guys like me. We're so damn smart we don't know anything. There's a line in the book that says, self-knowledge availed us nothing. And on the basis of self-knowledge, see, my dad's one of those drunks scattered around in that group. You know, drink up the paycheck, beat the wife, beat the kids, the whole stinking mess. I knew all about that. And on the basis of self-knowledge, knowing all about booze and what it was, I knew that could never, ever happen to me. I suffered from delusions of immunity on the basis of my self-knowledge. And so at the age of 21, I started to drink in the Air Force. Got into trouble with my first drink because it turned into my first drunk. New Year's Eve, the Officers Club, Old Lang Syne started, and the colonel's wife wished me Happy New Year and gave me a little New Year's Eve peck. And this gal I used to read the traditions for, there's a part of Sue's story where she talks about instant love. And the first time I ever heard that, God, I recognized that, instant love. And this colonel's wife, a beautiful little brunette, she was just a doll. And she was married to this old colonel. This old codger was 42, and here she was 32, and I knew that the lady was in trouble, and what she needed was 22-year-old me. So I made a lot of, by this time I'm 22, and so I made a lot of trips back from the bar and said, don't believe it was you. Happy New Year again, baby. Anyway, for a second lieutenant to try to make out with the colonel's wife, that's stupid. And it went downhill from there. Anyway, I got... that's the way I drank and what happened to me. I ended up in the chaplain's office. I was Catholic again at that time. I got called, and he didn't say, this is Father, whoever he was. He said, this is Major, whoever he was, and you get to hell over here, Lieutenant. Well, now, that doesn't sound right, pulling that rank among us Catholics. So anyway, I went over there, and I walked in. Sure enough, here's sitting the colonel, and they started that on me. And the chaplain said, well, what was wrong with you, son? He said, were you drunk? And I said, well, certainly, sir. I mean, you don't think I'd act like that if it wasn't, do you? Sir. You say sir a lot when you're in trouble. And then the next statement came out, and I don't know whether the colonel made it or the chaplain, but this was the next statement. Maybe you're one of those people who can't drink. And I said, boy, you got that right. And they cut me loose, and I got out of there. And to this day, that's my definition of an alcoholic. I'm one of those people who can't drink. And I knew that had been a close call. I'd almost ruined a career, whatever that was. And so I had to talk to me like all good alkies do. And I said, Bud, you can never, ever go to another New Year's Eve party at the Officers Club. Never. But if you're forced to put in an appearance, well, you can never, ever kiss another colonel's wife. And to this day, I'm afraid of colonel's wives. And I could never make the connection. Anything that can make you feel that good last night cannot be connected with what's coming down today. Anyway, I left Northern California. I was one of those alkies that no matter what I ever did or whatever I got into, I didn't feel like I'd really quite been up on top, like I'd really done it all. My record proved otherwise. I was never in less the top 15% of anything I tried. But I didn't feel it down here in my gut, where alkies live. And so I left Northern California and came to Southern California and enrolled at UCLA as a pre-medical student. And I was there 3 semesters and applied for medical school, headed back east to start this new venture. I didn't know it was called Taking a Geographic. And I got back there, and they made me take a physical to see if I was okay. And little did they know. And they had 2 rooms going. The guy in front of me got a room on the right. He got a second-year resident in dermatology, a future skin doctor, to check him over. Room opened up on the left. I get a second-year resident in cardiology. And so he's got me stripped and listening to me with this thing, and he bent down over me and he said, anybody ever tell you had a murmur? And I shot up off that table. I said, hell no, what are you talking about? What do you mean murmur? He said, well, don't get excited. I said, who's excited? I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, that's what we call a little innocent, soft, grade 1 systolic murmur. But he said, your pulmonic second sound is split and widely fixed and doesn't close on expiration. I said, oh, yeah. My best defense is an offense. If you can't defend, we'll attack. And I think this guy said something bad, so I started on him. I said, man, you got to be kidding me. I said, I was in the military. I said, did you serve? Well, you 4F mother. He had served. And I said, I got an honorable discharge. How about you? Section 8? Well, his was all right. I said, I just left Southern California. I said, I was working 2 jobs, 7 days a week. I said, I'm journeyman 2 trades. I said, you want to run a foot race? I'd never run one, but I figured I'd beat his ass. And he said, well, just settle down. I said, man, settle down. I said, this is a hell of a deal. Go through what I've gone through. I said, I just got to this rotten place. Now it's a rotten place already. And I said, I just painted a house. He said, well, just settle down. And I said, well, you're not even going to let me start. You don't know what I can do. He said, oh, yeah, you can start. No problem. So I settled down. I figured I'd won. So what this guy told me, this was in the mid-50s, and what this guy told me, he said, this is in the days before they had that heart-lung machine where they could connect you up to the pump and let it pump and bypass the heart and work on it. So you're bypassed the heart, and the pump's doing the job, and they're working on your heart. And this was in those early days, and they were losing them like flies in those days. And he said, a couple of years ago, but they had this thing called strict hypothermia, where they just froze your butt and stopped the heart and sucked out the blood and worked on it. But they only had 4 minutes to work. So anyway, this guy said, a couple of years ago, he said, we froze a couple of 100 dogs and we took them down to this real low temperature, and we stopped the heart and made this big hole between the 2 upper chambers, which is what we think you have. And then after they lived a few months, we took them down and refroze them and sewed it up. And he said, it's working pretty good. He said, we're about to complete our first 100 people. He said, we think this is what you need. I said, yeah, you talk about going to any lengths. Thanks a lot. I deny all disease. I deny heart disease. I deny alcoholism. Disease, don't got it, don't want it, ain't going to have it. And so what this guy told me was that he said, we think you got this big hole, and the natural course of this disease is that by age 45, you'll be a cardiac cripple, you'll be bedridden. You'll be bedridden the last 5 years of your life, and you'll be dead by the age of 50. I said, hell, that's old anyway. Who needs to go beyond that? I don't feel that way anymore. And so anyway, I stuck my head in the sand for the next 3 years. Now, the reason this is such a part of my story is because my hangovers were the worst things I've ever known in my life. If I was not drinking, my resting pulse lying down at night was 96 to 100. That's my resting pulse. And if I was drinking, I could not keep up with it. It was like my heart was coming out of my chest. And if I was not drinking, I could sleep 16 hours, always. And that seemed to be about my drinking time, too. I could drink with you, drink for about 16 to 18 hours, but then that's my limit, because I go down, and you're looking at a dead man, and you're not going to see me for 24 to 36 hours. I'm totally wiped out. And those things were such a puzzle to me, how something like that can make you feel that good can kill you for up to 36 hours. So anyway, what this guy told me was that if they could freeze me and sew this thing up, I could expect a normal life expectancy. And so I stuck my head in the sand for the next 3 years and said to hell with it. And at the end of 3 years, I came up with the alky solution. I said, to hell with it, you're going to die anyway. So I went over and talked to the guy, and I said, okay, freeze me. And so he did. And I obviously made it. And so then I had to reward myself at the end of the next quarter for being alive. And so I did it the only way one of us knows how to do it. And I pulled a drunk that you would have been proud of. And I was absolutely amazed. I was up by noon the next day. There had never, ever been anything wrong with booze or drinking. I had been stuck with that bad heart all those years. And now normal people don't think that way. And I have yet to meet the alcoholic that doesn't qualify for step 2. And step 2 says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And by golly, I qualify real well, and I don't ever want to forget that. And so, anyway, I left there and headed back to Southern California. I first got married as a teenager. I always kind of felt born married, and got back here with my first wife. Every time I got a new wife, I got a new religion, and I was Catholic for 13 years, lacking 2 months. Those Catholic girls will cut you loose after a while. I don't care what the church says. I mean, they can only take so much. And when I was out there drinking, if you could get me to talk about it, I used to say that I'd divorce my first 2 wives, because that sounds very macho. Divorce the wench, you know. It's a damn lie is what it is. They both divorced me. Now, that's the truth. And I also used to say when I was out there drinking, if you could get me to talk about it, that I never made the same mistake twice. By that I meant I never remarried one of my mistakes. And that's kind of been revealed to me since I got here, because that first lady, after that first sweet lady dumped me, you had interlocutory final decree, 12 months. I don't know who they made those laws for, not alkies. I'm through way back over there. So anyway, what I did is, while I'm waiting for this 12 months to be up, I moved in with this second lady, and we started what's called California marriage. And that's where you put your stuff with her stuff and move in together. And so we started this California marriage, and she had a brand new home over in Tustin. She also had a brand new Oldsmobile, and she was also making $1,000 a month. Big bucks back in those days. I wasn't a total loss. I was making $350, and also I had this old '54 Pontiac, and also I had this old Army desk that I picked up at a garage sale in Laguna Beach one Saturday morning for $15. So anyway, we put our stuff together and started this California marriage, and I couldn't handle a California marriage because, I'm a kind of alky. I got to do things right. And her 16-year-old daughter is living with us. And here I am, pillar of the community, setting this bad example for this 16-year-old girl. So I had to solve that problem. So what I did a couple of weekends later, I loaded her in her new Oldsmobile, and I drove to Las Vegas and became a bigamist is what I did. And but I felt okay about that. I'd solved that little girl's problem. And so about 2 months later, the little girl moved out. She moved in with her 21-year-old brother, who had moved out the day we started the California marriage. Well, to hell with them. I tried, So anyway, finally the year's up. So now I'm married to her twice, but I'm not really married to her. So I got a problem. So I had to solve that one. So I ran up to to L.A. and picked up another marriage certificate, and then ran back to Orange County and married her in Orange County. It's going to be a real California marriage, and it's going to last forever. And that was the 3 months I was Presbyterian. Presbyterian girls catch on a lot faster, and I got there at 2:30 this particular morning after 3 months as Presbyterian, and my key didn't fit her new door anymore, and there sat my desk and my books and my clothes in the middle of the damn street, and my 54 Pontiac wasn't running at that time. It had been in a little altercation, so I called up this buddy of mine, and he brought his pickup over, and we loaded my stuff in. Away we went. And I'd always go down and counterfile. And then in case they drop the ball, then you can go right through with your countersuit. I have a knack for marrying non-drinking women. I didn't know they were called Al-Anons, and they don't drop the ball, so I never had to use a countersuit. And so anyway, it was at this point that I figured out my problem. I figured that first lady had been my age, and that was obviously wrong, and the second lady had been the older woman that can love you and take good care of you and do nice things for you, and she was, and she did for 3 months. And so I figured what I ought to do is find a young one and train her. And it was at this point that I spotted Ungrateful Mary, and she looked trainable to me. And she was 22 years old, and I was 33, and that seemed about right. So I got started on this training program, and I asked her to move in with me and start the California marriage. I thought that one had worked pretty good, and she wouldn't do that. Now, it turns out she's a card-carrying member of that other fellowship. She wasn't at that time, but she had all the qualifications, and she wouldn't move in with me. And I was afraid to go back to Vegas, afraid they might pass information between states and say, hey, you know, the guy's back again. But I'd heard about Mexico and had never tried Mexico, so I asked her to go to Mexico. Well, she wouldn't do that either. Well, to hell with it. So finally, I got another 12 months to wait. So as soon as so I had to wait. So finally the 12 months is up. So this is a young girl, and every young girl needs a honeymoon, and I'm going to train this one right. And so I picked up the final decree on April the 1st and had the marriage certificate all set to go, and we got married on April 2nd. Her mom and dad flew out here for the wedding, and also to babysit our son, who was born on March the 20th. And anyway, so as soon as the marriage ceremony was over, her mom and dad picked up the kid. He's 12 days old, and loaded Ungrateful in the car and headed to San Clemente, Nixon country, another brilliant move. And got down there and checked in the hotel. I bought her dinner, and checked in the hotel and flipped on TV, watched a little TV. She went in the bathroom, changed pads a couple times, used breast pump a couple times, and came back out and flipped off TV and went to sleep, and woke her up about 6 next morning and loaded her in the car and stopped in San Juan Capistrano on the way back and got her a cup of coffee and donut, and got back into Santa Ana and picked up the kid. He's 13 days old now, and took her over to the house and dumped her off, and she moved in with me. Then it was okay because she had her magic piece of paper and the 13-day-old kid, and dumped her off, and I went to the office and went to work. But she had had her honeymoon. Wasn't going to hang that one on me down the road. So anyway, I went home for lunch every day as part of the training program, and so we've been married a little less than a year, and I get home for lunch this one day, and she's not there. And here sits this damn note and a sandwich. Now, this doesn't make any sense. I'd have trained her, she'd have trained E. What the hell is this? So, anyway, I got home that night, and I said, you weren't home for lunch today? And she said, no, I left you a note and a sandwich. And I said, well, where'd you go? And she said, I went to a meeting. I figured some damn sorority thing or bridge thing or something. I said, what kind of a meeting? And she said, Al-Anon. I said, what in the hell is Al-Anon? She said, that's a group of people that get together that have trouble with booze. And I said, what kind of trouble you got with booze? Thought maybe I'd married a closet drinker or something, you know. And she said, well, I said, what kind of trouble you got with booze? And she said, I don't understand it. And I said, there's not that much to understand. You either drink or you don't. And I said, you don't drink. One, saw you have two one night. Now, she's trying to get dinner, and none of this is making any sense. Now, those folks have free pamphlets, and they also have books, and she brought some of that crap home. And she brought out this book, and the name of the book, right out on the cover of the book, Living with an Alcoholic, is the name of the book. And I took one look at that. I got to be calm. I had a trainor, and I said, as far as I know, when I come and go here every day, I'm the only guy coming and going. I thought that was good. And I said, the only thing I've seen the kid belt lately is milk. So by the simple process of elimination, I am the alcoholic you're living with. Now, at that point, she threw up her hand and shook her head. She said, I am not calling you an alcoholic. Now, that's apparently the first rule they teach him over there. Don't ever tell him what he is. And when she did that, I'm shaking like a leaf. I said, damn, you don't insult my intelligence. I said, read that. What does that say? I said, where did you find out about this flaky organization? Who took you to this? And she said, your lawyer. And now, he'd been my lawyer for about 5 years, but the man was about to lose a client or his life or both. And I had some thinking to do. I think best when I drink. It's a bad combination, but I always had to do it that way. And I got out my bottle and started on that lady's problem. And I got on that phone. I finally got that sucker about midnight. Now, he's an alcoholic. He's been known to lie. And besides that, he's a lawyer, and all of them lie. And he tells a different story. He said it was about 2 in the morning when I finally got him on the phone. Anyway, he asked me a bunch of fool questions. You know how they are. They never shut up. And it wasn't until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous that I recognized that, the guy wasn't so damn smart. He sat there and read the 20 questions to me. That's all he did. And I had 20 no's, and I hung up the phone. I said, well, I talked to my lawyer. I'm not alcoholic. I said, where'd you go to this meeting? She said, in Laguna Beach. I said, that's still in Orange County. I go down there at that damn sorority of sob sisters and tell about this alcoholic you're living with, ruin my reputation, pillar of this community. I said, you continue to go to this flaky outfit. And I said, and I'll divorce you now. And I said, and what's more, you're only number 3, and I'm just getting wound up good. And I was never, ever a nice drunk, and I'm not proud of that, but that's what I told that sweet lady. And old Grateful Mary had the longest slip in Al-Anon history, because she did not go back to her meetings, nor did she discard her pamphlets or her killer book. By the way, they had to change the name of that book. You can't buy that book anymore. It's now called Al-Anon Family Groups. So if you got yourself one of those that says living with an alcoholic, you got yourself a collector's item. Hang on to that sucker. It probably killed somebody. And she still got her killer book. And as a matter of fact, if we make it till April 2nd this year, Grateful Mary and I will celebrate number 32. And I'm happy to report that it'll be 26 years of that has been sober. So anyway, I had 5 more years of drinking to do. I was glad to see that Chapter 3 was read here tonight. I call Chapter 3 Attempt to Control Drinking. And if you like to drink the way I'd like to drink, that's the worst kind of drinking on the face of the earth. And forever overshooting the mark one more time and not being able to get a handle on this thing. And so 5 years later, that damn lawyer was still sober in Alcoholics Anonymous and took me to my first meeting. And I was not impressed with you people when I got here, because, you're talking about higher power. My higher power. I knew you were talking about God, and when I got here, I recognized that, and I said, Alcoholics Anonymous is not going to be another damn religion for me. And so I refused to go to Sunday meetings. Made sense to me. And so I had 6 home groups, and I went to 6 meetings a week, and on Sunday I watched TV. And that lasted for 6 months. The end of 6 months, I ended up with 8 home groups, and 2 of them were Sunday meetings. And that was to continue for 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, I got a call from my oldest daughter, who had just completed her first year of college. Now, I didn't have a relationship with those first 4 older kids. And she called me and she said, Dad, I'd like to come to California and work in your office this summer. And I was delighted about that. And I owe that to you, and I owe that to Alcoholics Anonymous, because she knew that her dad was sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and things were different in my life. And so she came out, and she had been working about 6 weeks. Her mother at that time was in the process of taking me back into the courtroom for the wreckage of my past. And my oldest daughter didn't want to be a part of that sick courtroom scene, and she wanted a direct relationship with her father. And I was pleased about that. And we're just sitting talking this morning, and I thought things were going well, and all of a sudden my daughter went into this rage, and she jumped up from the table and called me a couple of names and went storming out the back door. And she got to the back door, and I heard it slam, and then I heard a blood-curdling scream, and I thought she's just letting it all hang out. And then the door opened, and she came walking back in. And I could see what had happened. In her anger, she had not gotten her left hand out of the way in time, and she chopped off 2 fingers. So I got her sitting down, and then I got her lying down, and I got some sterile dressing, and I wrapped her fingers. And And I went to that back door and I picked up those fingers, and I got a styrofoam cup and I put ice in it, and then I put the fingers in, and then I put ice on top of that. And I stuck it in my pocket. The kind of work that I do, there are probably 150 guys in Orange County that do the kind of work that I do. They have a thing in this country called the Hand Society, that you don't just go down and join the Hand Society. You have to be asked to join, and it's a very exclusive group. At that time, there was something like, I think, 383 members in the entire nation. There are a lot more now, but anyway, a couple of those guys were buddies of mine, and I called this one guy up, and I told him what had happened. He said, fine. He said, I'll meet you at the emergency room. And so we got over there, and he took a look at it, and he said, well, buddy, he says, common accident, happens every day. Car doors, house doors, filing cabinets, safes, sliding windows. Said, she's just going to end up with 3 fingers all the same size. And I said, now, wait a minute. I said, she's a young girl. She's a very pretty girl, and she just completed her first year of college, and she's got a long life ahead of her. And I said, he said, look, bud, I said, I got the fingers here, and they're cold, and they're clean. He said, if she were 1 or 2 years old, he said, I wouldn't hesitate to sew them back on, because sometimes the young kids, they'll actually take. He said, she's an adult. They don't take. He said, and so I said, well, I got him here. And he said, all right, let's take a look at him. So he took a look at him, and he said, well, he said, you're right. He said, they're clean and they're cold. He said, okay, I'll tell you, since you're not buying this, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, I'll go ahead and sew them back on, but you have to understand this up front, that it's only going to serve as a good biological dressing. They'll go ahead and turn black and gangrenous, but it'll keep them from getting infected, and then we'll have to do a secondary repair down the road. And I said, well, at least you tried. And he said, okay. So he sewed them on, put her in the hospital, and I spent the worst day of my entire life, drunk or sober, before or since, because it all came down on me. What a lousy, rotten failure I've been as a father, as a husband, you name it. And Ungrateful Mary and that lawyer, they babysat me, and they listened to me cry and whine and not eat and not talk, work. And they said, you're not the one that was angry. You're not the one that was upset. You're not the one that slammed the door on her finger. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. And I said, yeah. My head knows all of that. But down here in my gut, where alkies live, it says guilty. And so he stayed till about 1 in the morning, and he left, and Mary and I went back to go to bed. I never once thought about taking a drink, but I did consider suicide. And he had been gone about 10 minutes, and Mary and I went back to go to bed, and there it was again. It all came back, and I didn't know what to do. So I did something I've never ever done before in my entire life. I got down on my knees beside that bed, and I said, God, I don't have to tell you what I want for my daughter's fingers. I said, you know that. But I want you to know this, that whatever you got in mind for her and whatever you got in mind for the fingers, I'm buying the package. And I was able to crawl in that bed and go to sleep. Now, that's called step 3. And I'm sober 2 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I finally got around to step 3. And I was able to sleep, and I couldn't believe that. And so the next night, I was on my knees again, and I'm the kind of alky, if I do anything twice, I'm addicted, and I've been on my knees every night since then. I was on my knees last night. I'll be on my knees again tonight. And to make a long story short, she left that hospital, and those fingers not only did not turn black and gangrenous, they looked a little bit pink, and she came home, and they got pinker and pinker and pinker, and she had to go to the doctor's office every other day for a dressing change. And she'd come home, she said, Dad, when I get there, he takes off the dressing and runs and gets his camera and starts snapping pictures, and just kind of shakes his head. And I said, you tell him that doctors only sew things back together, that God heals them. And this is one alky that didn't know that before I got here and met you people. And I've just been given the high sign that we're through, and so I'm through.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.